Hello, BookTube. As I've mentioned, I am up here at the very old house in Vermont, visiting Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads and the Richardson family. I'm sorry that all of these videos in your feed are all going to look identical with the last few. I somehow forgot to pack more than one sweatshirt, so every video of mine has this same sweatshirt. I assure you, I am cleaning myself. I just have this one sweatshirt. I asked Mark earlier today if we could go to Ollie's so that I could get a nice cheap sweatshirt in some other color. And he squinted at me, and his response was, and I quote, "Screw you, I work for Mel Brooks." So I guess that's a no. So you just gotta have to bear with this gold sweatshirt for I'm staying gold, pony boy. But we did go out. We didn't go to Ollie's, but we did go out again today. Mark had town-related stuff to do in the morning, and I had writing to do in the morning, dealing with emails and also writing a review. But early afternoon, we were perfectly free to clamber into the big red truck and go on expeditions with the Bean. As long as I don't have to leave Frida behind, as long as she's with me, I am game to go anywhere. And you'll never guess what we did. We went book hunting. And I found a pile of books. We went to a few different places, one of which was something I've mentioned on this channel before. It's a sprawling antique mart in Quechee. That just goes on forever and ever. It's got 2 layers or 3 floors. I think you can go into the basement as well. And everything in there is on consignment from a million different owners. And it's everything out of the world, everything under the sun that you could possibly imagine. There's a gigantic wooden bin as big as a gigantic aquarium, entirely full of buttons. Not coat buttons, but sign, display buttons, slogan buttons from various shops that no longer exist, from 20 different presidential campaigns, and everything else like that. Just all over the place. Frida had a ball there, strutting around the aisles and walking up to people to demand that they pet her, and she was a hit because she's so cute. But even people whose initial reaction might temporarily be, "Oh, there shouldn't be a dog in here," the people at Quechee don't seem to mind. And even if your first instinctive reaction is, "Oh, I don't know, there should be a dog here," your next reaction is, "Oh, I want to hug and kiss you because she's so adorable." So we went there, and I've never had much luck with books at Quechee. They have different consignments of a whole bunch of them, but they always struck me as a little bit wayward and a little bit overpriced. You'd have to find a gem there to want to get it. I didn't find any gems today, but I have, from the very beginning at Quechee, had excellent luck with back issues of comic books. And I found that again. I found a stack of back issues of comic books, mostly starring the Legion of Superheroes, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. There's an anniversary celebrating 50 years. This painted cover there, that is Lightning Lad, taking it on the chin with lightning. Then there's this thing from the 1970s, I think, DC Superstars, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. This is just reprints. Only it's classic stories, the adult Legion versus Legion of Supervillains, Superboy coming forward in time, and Superman coming forward in time and learning about the future of the Legion. But it's got a different, sort of a custom-made cover by Ernie Chow for this issue. And also the find of the day at Quechee is this issue of Superboy. There he is punching Sasquatch with a flying saucer in the background, just so you know. And this is also just tons and tons of reprints, although if I remember correctly, there is an original story at the beginning, and then a bunch of Superboy reprints in the back, and with a classic Kurt Swan cover, where that is supposed to be Superboy, but Kurt Swan, as he got older as an artist, he started losing his ability to draw Superboy as anything other than just a smaller Superman. That doesn't look like a boy at all. But also I got issues of the Legion, including a spin-off thing, a couple of spin-off things that are incomplete. It's just the luck of the draw at Quechee. I found Who's Who in the Legion of Superheroes. I remember getting these things. I found issue 1 through 5 out of 7. They all have these wraparound covers. Each one has a different wraparound cover. What I would give to have posters of all of these wraparound covers. And this is not a separate narrative. This is just exposition about the various Legionnaires. And I remember when this was coming out. See, this has a dark side wraparound cover. I remember when these were coming out, and I don't know that DC has ever bothered to collect them. And now, one of you has been very kind to flood me with your electronic collection of Legion of Superheroes back issues. But the separate things like this, Who's Who in the Legion of Superheroes, I have not seen electronically. So it'd be fun to have it again. Then I got a bunch of Legion issues, even though I have these electronically. I got them anyway. And they also have a gap, for those of you who care about gaps. I got issue 240, 241, 242, and 244. So 243 is missing. Superboy in the Legion of Superheroes. There is a classic cover. That is Grimbor the Chainsman. He's a supervillain that the Legion has. You might wonder what his superpower is. Well, he's an older man. He likes to wear leather, and his favorite thing to do is tie up the teenage male members of the Legion of Superheroes. So I'll leave you to guess what his superpower is. But we have a whole bunch of these other things too. Look at this cover. It's just a disembodied brain. Fantastic. This artist's last name is Sherman. He is very, very good, but he's so detailed. Look at this work. He's so detailed that he could never be a regular Legion artist at all. It just wouldn't work. I think he did this cover as well, where the Legionnaires are fighting in space, and that's Element Lad telling Superboy that there just aren't enough of them to stop this invasion, and that's perfectly fine, because Element Lad is wearing a space helmet with a transceiver. Superboy, however, does not need to breathe, so he doesn't need a helmet when he's flying in space. But that means he can't talk to Element Lad either. He needs a communicator of some kind, and he doesn't have one. But that's all right. And then this thing here where the Time Trapper shows up again to fight Superboy. I have these issues electronically, but as Michael K. Vaughan has pointed out in our Comic Book Wednesdays, DC has a terrible track record with reprinting older issues. They're terrible at it. Marvel's great at it, but DC's not. So a lot of these things haven't been reprinted. And Who's Who in the Legion, I doubt would ever get reprinted, nor would this thing. This is also a limited thing. I got issues number 2 and 3 out of 3. I don't have number 1. This is Secrets of the Legion of Superheroes with Ross Andrew covers. That, again, is a sort of compartmentalized story. It's not part of the Legion continuity. It's a story on its own that tells the Legion's origin and threads a mystery throughout that whole story as it tells you the Legion's story. I think this was collected once upon a time in a little booklet, but I don't know that there are electronic versions of this or Who's Who in the Legion. I wish there were, because I'd like to have issue number 1, and I'd like to have the 2 Who's Who in the Legion issues that I don't have. But I also found a ton of books, as you might guess. I found a ton of books. So how are we going to do this? I found a bunch of mass market paperbacks, including classic old science fiction. E.M. Busby's books. This is A Cage of Man, The Proud Enemy, and the conclusion of the Demu books, End of the Line. This is a Vincent Tafate cover. I haven't read this in ages. I don't remember when Cage of Man first came out. 1973. Okay, so I haven't read this in a long time, and I'd be willing to bet that I haven't read End of the Line. So classic old science fiction felt just perfect to get here in Vermont. Then some romance novels. I got all authors that I know and all books that I've read. I believe I've read all 3 of these. The first one is Undone by Virginia Henley. I think these are all classic or new style Regencies where the characters can't wait to disrobe. They all have eye-popping step backs. The next is Stephanie Lawrence, To Distraction. And here we have, that is our step back with a bright blue moon there. And then Lisa Kleypas, Worth Any Price, which I know I have a copy back at Hyde Cottage, and I think I also have an e-copy of these. I don't know that I have any Stephanie Lawrence in ebooks, or much Virginia Henley, but I know that I have this one. But the problem with the ebooks is they don't have the step back. The step back here is very just classic painting like that. They're both almost naked. That's how you know it's a modern Regency. And then a few paperbacks. I got Paul Manette. You got to give something to the gays at all times. I've got a couple of those here, and I love Paul Manette's writings. This is the third of his memoirs, Last Watch of the Night, all about living with AIDS, dying of AIDS, thinking that he was dying of AIDS, and writing about it, chronicling it right to the end. He just couldn't stop writing. He loved writing anyway, loved it viscerally as a process. But once he had this epical sickness where he knew it was part of the history books, he chronicled that as well. This is a collection of essays, and some of them are better than others, but there's lots of moving stuff in here. Every time I get a copy of this and describe it on air, one of you wants it, and I get rid of it. So I found another one today. These were all incredibly cheap, so I didn't have to worry. I got a lot of books. I didn't have to worry about the price. And the next one is older. This is 1965. And I've probably read this already in a little mass market paperback in some form or other. This is Julian Simons. And this is his book, The Belting Inheritance. In these new what is this? Poison Pen Press. These are classic British Library crime classics. They did all these, and they did them with these kind of wash pastel covers. All of them are uniform in this look. And Julian Simons is fantastic. I love everything that he writes, both all of the murder mysteries that he wrote and all of the. He wrote a lot of nonfiction work about the murder mystery genre, and it's all great. It's all just great. I don't have a lot of it electronically. I have hardly any Julian Simons electronically, so I was happy to get this. And keep in mind, although this is self-indulgent, virtually none of these books are coming back with me to Hyde Cottage. I'm not going to lug 200 books back to Hyde Cottage where 5,000 books are already waiting for me. These are full bookshelves here. The next one, also for the gays, this is Barry Worth's great book, The Scarlet Professor, about Newton Arvin, an American literary critic and historian who... his apartment here in Massachusetts was raided, and very minor homosexual pornography was found there. He was a heavily closeted gay man at a time when, had he not been, he could easily have lost his profession. And he ended up mostly losing it anyway, because he was facing charges for what were at the time draconian anti-smut campaign, and decided to turn on friends of his, to name names. Makes him kind of a loathsome figure, but only personally. This is a wonderful book telling his story, and it's also a wonderful inducement, I would hope, if you read it, to go and find Newton Arvin's books. They are amazingly good. They are amazingly good. He wrote on titanic figures of American literature like Whitman and Melville, and his books are amazing. He was an amazing thinker and writer on formative American literature. This next one, another clear example of something that I will leave here. I have a copy of this at Hyde Cottage, but this is a great anthology. This is English Country House Murders. And that's all it is. It's just a big collection of murders set in English country houses, many of which are fictionalized, and some of which are real, and the real ones I've been to. So it's an amazing thing. You know, you go to a country house, especially at the turn of the 19th century, early 20th century. You go to a country house for a weekend or a week in the country, and you're away from everywhere. It's the perfect setting for a murder mystery. You'll have the sleuth. You might a few of these stories have a law enforcement officer who makes the trek out to Foxley Hall or wherever, and he's presented with an extremely hostile group of people, one of whom had to do it. I love it. I have read this. This is a great murder mystery anthology. I've read through it many, many times. Probably now that I have it here, I will read one or two of these before I head back to Hyde Cottage. This next one is a big fat novel. I found it. It was dirt cheap, so I grabbed it. This is Ian Pearce, who we saw on this channel most recently for An Instance of the Finger Post. And this is his much later book, Arcadia, which is about fractured worlds. It's about a man who's, the spine of it is a man who's trying to write a fantasy novel. And he's trying to do it in an original way, write an original fantasy novel that doesn't just ape Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and Lord Dunsany and whatnot. But the story branches out from there into fractured realities that are connected with each other in extremely well thought out ways. Just amazingly intricate book. The same kind of narrative intricacy that you find in Instance of the Finger Post, only here with I have to say, much as I love Instance of the Finger Post, here with a great deal more entertainment value stirred in. This is a book, one of the rare instances on this channel where I can actually strongly recommend that you go to a big British booktuber. There's a big British booktuber named Jen who did Jen Campbell. A lot of you will follow her. She was probably the first booktube channel that a lot of you subscribe to. She loved this book and did a great video on it where she enthuses, yes, but in a very informed way. If I remember, I will leave a link to that video. For the first time probably that I've linked to a Jen Campbell video in years, but when you're right, you're right. And this is a terrific book. This is head candy, as they say. Then this next one will be familiar to you. I've had this many, many times. I've had mass markets and hardcovers. I get rid of them. But I've decided that I like this series enough to want them all in hardcover with a dust jacket. And that is the Alvin Maker books of Orson Scott Card. This is Alvin Journeyman. There is Alvin, our main character. And the thing that he is holding there is the no-go plow, which he builds in Prentice Alvin, the third book in the series. I think this is the fourth or fifth book in the series. The no-go plow is a golden plow. You have to attach it to a framework, and it has to be pulled by horses and whatnot. But it is alive and sentient. It knows that it wants to plow the earth. Alvin made it that way because he has the mother of all superpowers. And I've had this a number of times. I got it in hardcover as soon as it came out because I love this series. But I'd be interested in rereading it, very much so. I don't know whether to reread this now or to do a gigantic reread of all of the Hat-Rack River novels once I have them all and can just read through them. I don't have, for instance, the first two, Red Prophet or Seventh Son. I don't have either one of those in hardcover with dust jackets. I know they exist, but I don't have them. My collection starts with Prentice Alvin and then moves on to Heartfire, and I think this is the third one, and then there's one more after this. I will find them all eventually. I just don't know whether to hold off the reread until then. This next one is a huge historical novel, Hawk Quest, by Robert Linden. I had this in a big trade paperback once, and I think I just never got around to reading it. It's a big historical novel set in England in the immediate wake of the Norman Conquest. And deals with, among other things, I think, if I remember correctly, a weirdly specialized breed of hunting falcon, hence the title. But we'll see. It's for when I feel like a gigantic, fat historical novel, and I don't, at the moment, feel like that. And I don't think I will for the rest of this year. So it'll just be storing up, like it'll be storing up treasure for later on. Then this next one is an amazing debut. When did this come out? This was a debut from 2014. So before we were talking to each other, this is The Quick by Lauren Owen. Got it in a nice hardcover with deckled edges there. About a young man who goes to college and disappears. And he's an aesthete, he's a would-be poet, and his sister is worried about him and goes to try and find out what happened to him and discovers an entire world lurking behind the respectable ivy-colored facade of the college. An entire world that has sucked her brother in. And the novel it's incredibly inventive and has a very sensitive ear for language. It's one of those books where you read it and have to keep reminding yourself that it's a debut. So, pretty good. Then the last two that I'll show you here are oversized. One slightly and one very much so. But we had a car, we had a big red truck, and these were cheap, dirt cheap, so I got them anyway. And I don't think I'll be bringing either one of them back to Hyde Cottage, so there was no risk involved. The first one is a larger, big, oversized, illustrated edition of Asa Briggs' Social History of England. This has all kinds of pictures all throughout it, whereas the original version of this that I read were Penguin blue-spined mass-market paperbacks from 1 billion years ago. And a lot of the social history here has been outdated, but Briggs is a wonderful writer. He's a wonderful narrator of all the stuff, and he has lots of opinions stirred in here as well. And Mark and I were talking just the other day about how ridiculous it is that we look at something that is at least 80% literary output and say if it's part of science or geology or physiology or even history, well, it's a little dated. It's ridiculous. We don't call Tom Jones dated. No, this is going to be a pleasure to read through. And then the last one, the biggest thing I got, is a treat. I had this once upon a time when it was brand new because I was so impressed by it. And then I lost track of it forever and ever. Now I have it back. This is going to be a delight to just page through endlessly. This is the nature artwork of Robert Bateman. The World of Robert Bateman. We sold a ton of this at the bookstore, despite the size, especially at Christmas. We couldn't keep it in stock. And these are all, let me see if I can get you an example. This is all of his preliminary artwork, the photos, the back stories of all of his artwork. But then you get his full color artwork. And he's not just an Audubon. He's not, or Peterson, where he's mainly catching the animal in a strict, clear view for identification purposes. He's really doing little narratives, which I guess Peterson did a lot of those as well. They're little narratives where you get the animal in situ, and you're not really supposed to get enough information there to identify it. Instead, it's a glimpse of a natural world in an area at a moment that you as a human would never see. I remember paging through this thing in a leisurely fashion endlessly. And now I have a copy, so that's great. That's fantastic. And that was our book haul for today. Can we do a Steve Pyramid? I don't know if we can. Let's give it a try. The World of Robert Bateman, an oversized artwork. The Social History of England, also oversized. Asa Briggs' book on social history in England over the course of 800 years. The Quick by Lauren Owen. Hawk Quest by Robert Linden. Alvin Journeyman by Orson Scott Card. Arcadia by Ian Pears. Real nice find. Find that in a nice, clean hardcover. The English Country House Murders, a great anthology. I strongly recommend it. Your library will have it. The Scarlet Professor about poor Newton Arvin. What's this one called? The Belting Inheritance by Julian Simmons. The Last Watch of Night by Paul Monette. Now this is going to keel over on me. And then our mass markets. We have Worth Any Price by Lisa Kleypas. To Distraction by Stephanie Lawrence. And Undone by Virginia Henley. Then we have the Demu trilogy by E.M. Busby. I haven't read these in forever and ever. And finally, a stack of comics. The Legion. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. There was almost nothing else there that really interested me comic book wise, but there was 500 times this amount of Legion back issues. You could almost have gone through an entire era. I could have come away with 400 Legion comics. They were everywhere. So maybe another trip to Quechee would be in order. but I don't know. I doubt very much that this is the last of our book buying expeditions, but it's the last for today. So I'm going to wrap this up and call it quits for video making for today. But I'll be back, maybe in a different sweatshirt. One can only hope. Thank you, BookTube.